The Great Awakening has officially begun. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the top things secret societies don't want you to know about. These are basically the most important conspiracy theories ever that have to do with you and you taking your power back and the Great Awakening that's occurring in human consciousness as we change this world. So these are what the secret societies don't want you to know about. Okay, so you might be asking, Jake, what the heck are you talking about secret societies and the Great Awakening? What on earth are you referring to? So instead of me looking like a lunatic, instead, I'm going to play you a clip right now. One of the last speeches John F. Kennedy ever gave. A lot of people believe this is what ultimately led to his assassination, but I'm going to play you this clip on him talking about secret societies.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Now, John F. Kennedy isn't the only person that was a very famous person or a leader in the world. In fact, maybe you see types of things that people in Hollywood say, well, let's get out of the entertainment sector and let's talk specifically about global leaders. John F. Kennedy was, of course, President of the United States. Now, I also want to refer you to what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, he was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom twice, and his name was Benjamin Disraeli, and I want to share with you exactly what he said. Quote, "The governments of the present day have to deal not merely with other governments, with emperors, kings, and ministers, but also with the secret societies which have everywhere their unscrupulous agents and can, at the last moment, upset all the government's plans." In another video, I talked about how the number one conspiracy theory of all is that secret societies which have controlled human civilization, and they use the banking system to control civilization, and then they've used the banking system to buy up all the major corporations in present time. There's only 6 corporations that control all the media in the world. And so they have established a central banking system that operates independently of governments in every country of the world. They can print money out of thin air, buy everything up. But this goes much further back to spirituality and the occult, which is, I talked about in another video, the number one conspiracy theory is really that this world is it's just an electromagnetic field. That's all this world is. So they've convinced us that we're physical bodies. This body, this hand, all of this stuff, it's just energy. 99.999% of what it is empty space. Truth. Science now shows us this. They've known this for a really, really, really long time through institutions and religions and other control mechanisms. And what this means is 99% of who you are is non-physical. You can't see it because 99% of this reality is empty space. So what this is telling us is everything is a result of consciousness. And they've known for a really long time that consciousness is actually what creates this reality, because this reality in essence is an illusion. It's a hologram. It's a projection of consciousness. And so since everything is energy and all the atoms and the subatomic particles of this universe are manifested based off of consciousness or perception, they've intentionally used subliminal messaging and control mechanisms far beyond television, but it's really culminated, and it's the mass indoctrination of human consciousness has really went to another level since they started taking control of and implementing on a mass scale media. Now, this goes back, and we're going to talk a little bit about some types of government experiments they were doing, but once you realize and you are when you're the top 1/10 of 1% in the world, and your families are what created the banking systems, and you own all the oil companies in the world, and you own major shares in every newspaper and every media outlet, and you get the final say or censorship of what's put out. And no, we're not talking about censorship of a communist dictatorship like China. We're talking about censorship of a supposedly free democratic society. It's really just an illusion of choice. But when you control all that, and you know that consciousness and perception create reality, then you're aware all you need to do to control the population, so you have total power, total control, and you have all the wealth in the world, in essence. All you need to do is infiltrate people's consciousness. Get them to believe that they aren't good enough. Get them to believe that the only thing that exists is the world of their senses. So you convince all these people, even though 99% of what of reality is non-physical, meaning only 1% of who you are is the stuff that you see. 1% of reality is what you can see. 99% of it is otherwise. Reality is a result of perception and consciousness. So they control you. And this goes back to, they found out how the mind works. And the mind works through the subconscious. The mind is really more like a record player. It's a habitual feedback loop that creates reality unconsciously based off of the way that it's programmed. It's kind of like the whole analogy about the iceberg. You only see the tip of the iceberg, and there's 95% of the iceberg that you can't see. And that 95% of the iceberg is what sinks the Titanic, right? Well, similarly, 95% of who you are and how your mind creates reality, you aren't aware of, because subconscious means below conscious, so we aren't aware that it's happening. And so the reality of this situation is they came to really significant strides in understanding of human psychology and how psychology creates reality, how perception and consciousness actually create reality. And they came to all of this based off of Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud found out that people were controlled through their unconscious. The human unconscious could be controlled. You could manipulate the human unconscious through fear, and you could manipulate the human unconscious through greed. You could manipulate the human unconscious to control it and manipulate it based off of getting it to believe that you aren't good enough, smart enough, etc. And so Sigmund Freud learned all about this, and he learned that the subconscious mind was really just a record player, that you could actually institute commands into it or programs into it and get it to believe certain things to carry out your own hidden agendas. Now, he didn't use it in a sinister way, but his nephew, Edward Bernays, is the founder of modern public relations. So Edward Bernays was a rather cynical or rather sinister person. And he had a hidden agenda to take his uncle, his great, incredible uncle, Sigmund Freud's discoveries, and to use them to sell these ideas to the major banks and to the major industries of the world, to call it PR, public relations, which was they were going to get people through the subconscious, through repetition and certain things we're going to be talking about. They were able to get it. And if you're wondering, what does this have to do with everything? I'm going to tie this all back into the Great Awakening and how you can actually use this information to have financial freedom, health, happiness, attract your soulmate. These are all the things that they actually don't want you to know, because this is how the Great Awakening occurs. But first, Bernays sells this, Sigmund Freud's teachings in essence, for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to all the major tobacco companies. Oh, you think smoking's cool? And they get all the celebrities. They do it with, then the major banks started instituting malls across the world and building malls. Well, who did they build everything out with? Edward Bernays. And then they created this, you need to be cool, you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too ugly, your boobs are too small, buy all of this clothes and all these things you don't need. And they started creating this society where the 1/10 of 1% was making fortunes and controlling the perception of people to believe that they aren't good enough, smart enough, they need all these things that the global elites say they need to buy. And this thing perpetuated, and it was so bad that Sigmund Freud and his nephew Edward Bernays had a total falling out over all this stuff, because Sigmund Freud was distraught. It was being used. They were taking advantage of the human subconscious mind to reprogram and repattern it for sinister and hidden agendas that really weren't good things. Now, as they learned more and more and more of this, they started doing, the CIA and the government started doing experiments. One of the ones you probably heard of is MK Ultra. So in essence, MK Ultra was, what they did is they took people, a lot of times they basically abducted people. This was CIA. And this is all declassified now. After a certain period of time, the CIA has to either reclassify or declassify things. So there's public knowledge out there. And so MK Ultra, basically, what they did is they took people and they gave them psychedelics like LSD. And the reason that they did that was to get their conscious minds out of the way. And then what they would do is they would put people to sleep, like actually with drugs, put them to sleep. And they would use subliminal recordings to play for, in some of the reports, they said that it was 21-day increments. So they would actually use drugs to put people to sleep for 21 days. And then they would play these types of messaging or repetition-based messaging to see to the furthest extent how much could they, in essence, brainwash someone. And they could literally, they found out they could erase people's entire identities and memories in their head and institute new programs into them. This is the most advanced, and think about it. If they were doing that in the 60s and 70s, what do you think they're doing now? It's called a black budget. The government has something called a black budget, which is a budget where they don't disclose what they are spending money on in research. So this was in the 60s and 70s. It's called MK Ultra. It's kind of dark and all that type of stuff, but I'm going to tie this into something light and something that has to do with the awakening. So my point is here that the major institutions and secret societies, as JFK and Benjamin Disraeli were talking about, is they know how to control human consciousness, and they know that human consciousness creates reality. In the most crazy ways, they actually took people, put them to sleep with drugs, and reprogram their whole minds to see how much could you actually erase of the human mind to institute your own objectives into it. They accomplished that objective. Then they would do other things like hypnotize people while they were under drugs to get them to believe certain things, and they did a bunch of crazy stuff. You can do your own research. But here's the point. This all leads back to what now neuroscience is showing us. Neuroscience shows us now that nerve cells that fire together wire together in your brain. So what this is telling us is that all of this stuff that they have programmed into us actually wires into the neural connections of your brain. That every time you have an emotion, so you think about all this stuff, you think about the fact that they own, 6 companies own all the media. You think about how much fear and negativity is perpetuated in the media. You think about how from such a young age we're told we're not good enough, we're too fat, our tooth is crooked, this is wrong with you, you're too old, you're too young. And we think about all these types of stories that we believe about why we can't have the money we want or the success we want or the relationships we want or the confidence we want. It's these stories we've adopted from an attachment to the 1% of who we are, to what we can see, smell, taste, touch, to our world of our physical senses. And it has become a pattern plan in the subconscious mind. So we believe this pattern plan, the reality is a result of human perception. So we believe this thing, we recreate this thing, and all of control of human civilization happens because people don't realize they can actually reprogram their old mind. So when I learned all this stuff, and if you know my story a little bit, I dropped out of college when I was 19 years old. I dropped out when I learned all this stuff. And then I went in, I backpacked around the world, I self-published a book about it. No one would publish it. They all said, you're too young, this isn't gonna work, blah, 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 this book sucks, whatever else. It was called Into the Wind, my 6-month journey wandering the world for life's purpose. And so no one would publish it. I didn't want to go back to school. I learned all this stuff about the mind. So I said, well, if dark forces do things like that, couldn't I hypothetically totally brainwash myself to believe that I was already a international best-selling author, inspiring millions of people around the world, making millions of dollars, and awakening human consciousness? Even if everything that my eyes, ears, and my physical senses were telling me, all of society, all the institutions, I had ADD and ADHD in high school, I got kicked out of junior English class, so I finished an independent study. So I had all these stories that why I couldn't be as successful as an author and doing these things that I wanted. But I said, well, couldn't I hypothetically just do what they did with MK Ultra or what Edward Bernays did with subliminal messaging and repetition of programming of, isn't this cool? You need this. You're too fat. You need this. And the way that media and marketing and advertising companies now manipulate human consciousness, couldn't I do the same thing but use it for good and convince myself that I was an international best-selling author and YouTuber inspiring millions of people around the world? Couldn't I do that? So what I did is I created my own success hypnosis. And then once I learned more about neuroscience and I started to learn that all of those emotions that we have, you watch the news, you read the newspaper, you have an emotion to something. Every time you have an emotional reaction, you fire nerve cells in your brain. And what happens is Hebb's law comes into play because it says nerve cells that fire together wire together. So every day you keep hearing depression, famine, war, disease, depression, famine, economic collapse, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, all these things. You have unconscious emotions to those things, and they start to build your neural circuitry. So your brain, neuroplasticity, is one of the discoveries that we've had more recently, which basically tells us that your brain is malleable. It's plastic. It can be reprogrammed, rewired, and it can be changed. So they've wired our brains, to basically believe only in the 1% of who we are. Buckminster Fuller said 99% of who you are, you cannot see. And if this whole world is energy, there's a bunch more happening outside of this frequency of visible light. So what I did, and this is what they don't want you to know, this is how people really take their minds back, is I created basically a device to start rewiring and reprogramming and rechanging my mind. I started with the hypnosis, then I created something called the second mind. And the first mind is the one society is programmed. The second mind is using neuroplasticity, using the same things that hidden forces, secret societies have used to reprogram our minds and to convince us that we aren't good enough, smart enough, blah, 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 blah. I just did it for the opposite. And the results were amazing. I ended up selling 20,000 copies of that self-published book. Just for, if you don't think that's a lot, just for reference, the average book doesn't sell 2,500 in a lifetime. And I was able to sell 20,000. And then I was able to get a book contract with Penguin Random House, which is the #1 English publishing company in the world, for 2 more books. And I was, over the course of time, able to thankfully find my purpose and my place here on the internet. And this all happened. All of these great things started unfolding in my life. It was almost like I felt like I took my mind back from society. And it happened because I started to do that. So if you want to use my hypnosis, 1 million people from all over the world have downloaded it now, which is amazing in and of itself. And it's free. It's right there down below. It's jakeshypnosis.com, right there down below, jakeshypnosis.com. Or you could use the second mind, which is way more advanced. It's starting to use different brainwave entrancements. It's starting to use all of your different senses, subliminal messaging, like Edward Bernays and MK Ultra and the CIA was all using, but using it all for the positive. What if you did all that and you convinced yourself, you reprogrammed and rewired yourself to believe you're good enough, you were smart enough, that your soulmate was out there instead of there's no good guys left, I can't find the right woman. What if you programmed yourself for the opposite? What if you programmed yourself to not rely on the government for money? You programmed yourself to be a millionaire. You firmly planted into your mind the seed that you had $1 million ideas inside of you, and the perfect person was going to show up, and the perfect situation was going to show up, and you could not be stopped, that you were destined to change the world. What if 100 million people believe that? Heck, what if 7 billion people believe that? What if 7 billion people believed that they were more than a body? What if 7 billion people believed that we were all one? That you were not separate from one another. You were not separate from the divine intelligence, consciousness, God, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, whatever you want to call it. Alan Watts says, you can't get wet by the word water. But what if we were all programmed with this level of consciousness, and we knew that everything was energy? And we knew that there was nothing to fear except for fear itself, because death is simply an illusion, because everything is energy and death is just a shifting of a point of awareness to a higher dimension, that you're an eternal spiritual being. What if we knew that the only thing to fear was fear itself? So the way that we're controlled in society is we're always afraid. Well, what if I do this and it doesn't work out? What if I quit my job and start my business? What if everyone told me you couldn't make money as an artist, and I don't know if my soulmate's out there, and my last relationships didn't work out, so I'm afraid to jump into a new one, and I'm too old, and I'm too fat, and I'm too young, and I can't move to that city, and I can't do that thing. And what if we realized that all of those stories, those fears of consequences, of failure, of things not working out, what if we realized that was all an illusion and that we actually couldn't fail? So then all of a sudden this huge shift in consciousness starts to occur. People start to take their minds back, their power back. People start to achieve financially. People start to achieve. People start to build their dream businesses. They become they make their dream album. They go do that thing, whatever it is that they want. Everybody has their own unique thing that they dream about. Some people dream about educating the world and changing the education system. Some people dream about sustainable energy energy all over the world. Some people dream about feeding and giving clean water to everyone in the world. Some people dream about music. Some people dream about creating a beautiful ranch property with their beautiful children and inspiring other people to be more sustainable. Some people dream about inspiring people with health and fitness and well-being. Everybody has their own thing. Your thing's different than my thing. And we're all on a mission to find out those things. But what happens is most people don't think they can achieve it. And then they have a story. Well, I'm not smart enough, and my whole life I wasn't very intelligent. Like, I thought I had ADD and ADHD. I was prescribed Adderall and Ritalin in high school, and I was told by psychiatrist that was my problem. And so I realized that was all a story. It was all a limitation. I'm pure infinite consciousness. I'm pure potential. And the only thing that determines the only thing that determines what becomes my reality is what I identify with. You live in a world of infinite possibilities. You can be anybody you want. You can have anything that you want. You can achieve anything that you can imagine. You can become anybody you want. You can be as powerful, as influential as any person who's ever lived, as any famous person that's ever lived. You can do anything that you see or be inspired by, but the only thing that stops you is you believe you are your limitations. How could you be your limitations if they're only 1% of who you are? The only way you could believe that is you've been programmed, and your parents have been programmed, and your grandparents have been programmed, and this multi-generational programming of our inadequacy, of being less than, not good enough, not smart enough. Oh, the global leaders and the famous people, and they're the special people. No, they're not any more special than you. You can do it. You can be who you want to be. You can write a goal on a piece of paper and you can achieve it. And this world has convinced you that you can't, and it's been deliberately by design so they could profit off of our misery and convince us that they're the ones that know best for us. They've enslaved humanity in the modern world with 17% credit card interest rates on money that they print out of thin air from the Federal Reserve, and then they went and funded all of these crappy products and corporations, and then they sell us this bill of crap that we don't need and tell us we're not good enough or smart enough unless we get it. None of it's true. And this is falling apart. This is the Great Awakening. The control mechanisms of the world are starting to crack at their very seams. People are starting to wake up to their power. People are starting to wake up and ask themselves important questions like, who am I? What am I capable of? What can I really achieve in this life? Is there more to life? Have my whole life, have I believed in certain limitations or stories that just aren't true? Can I take my mind back? What can I really accomplish? And if you deliberately take control of your mind, I always say, everybody's brainwashed. So you might as well brainwash yourself before the world brainwashes you. It's my favorite quote, brainwash yourself before the world brainwashes you. Okay, so if they know all that stuff and think about it, only thing that stops us is we believe these silly stories that have become patterns in our subconscious, below conscious, subconscious, and they just keep playing themselves out. But here's the thing, neuroplasticity and psychology show us you can reprogram your subconscious and you can rewire your brain. And when we do this on a mass scale, when 7 billion people start to rewire their mind and they start to say things like this, I'm a genius. I'm applying my wisdom. I'm a genius. I'm applying my wisdom. What happens is people start to build their dream business, nonprofit arts. They raise their standards. They get healthier, happier. They treat people with more kindness and compassion. They realize that we don't need to give our power up to governments in order to change the world, that we're the ones that can do it. And we're the ones that will change our bank account. And we're the ones that can create financial independence. We're the ones with $1 million ideas to uplift humanity. That's when the world changes. That's the Great Awakening that's occurring right now. So, it's time to step out of fear and into love. It's time to realize that we are all one. We are all in this together. You are stronger than you believe. When you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary feat, some huge dream, you're going to realize all your limitations were illusions. You're going to find yourself to be more powerful, than you ever could have imagined. You can create financial independence, change your health, change your family's life, change your community, change your world. You are as powerful, as capable as any famous, influential person that has ever lived. And it's important to brainwash yourself before the world brainwashes you. This is the Great Awakening. We are realizing our perception creates reality. If you want to use my free success hypnosis, it's right there down below, jakeshypnosis.com, pinned to the comments, or check out the Second Mind. Once I learn more and more about this, the Second Mind is really, in my opinion, it's one of the things that I was meant to create as part of my purpose. And it's a real system. It's a real technology device that's designed to use all these things that we've learned from neuroscience about Hebb's Law, how nerve cells that fire together wire together. And what it's designed is to use neuroplasticity to build the second mind. I call the first mind the one that's been programmed by society. I am what I see, smell, taste, touch. I am my limitations. I'm just a little mortal being and blah, blah, blah. No. We're moving into a new paradigm, a new shift. That's not true anymore. It's time to step into the second mind. The second mind is the one that you consciously and deliberately create. That you consciously and deliberately create as to program yourself to the truth. You're an infinite being. You are smart enough to create financial independence. Your true love is out there. You can attract your soulmate. You have access to the unlimited well-being of the universe. And that you are as capable as any person who's ever lived. So right there down below is thesecondmind.com. You can use a free demo of the Second Mind to start to brainwash yourself before society brainwashes you. So be sure to check out my free success hypnosis and the Second Mind right there down below. It's time to take your mind back. This is the Great Awakening. So don't be afraid. You are stronger than you believe. It's time to go out there and create the person you were supposed to be. To manifest the highest vision and dreams that you have. When you're lying in bed and you're like, this is who I wish I was, and I imagine myself as this superhero doing all these epic things, building this great business, donating to all these awesome communities. I see myself as an international artist, as a person doing this and that. Everybody's got their totally unique own thing. But it's time for us to start living in our highest aspirations and to realize we're a lot more powerful than we could ever imagine. Leave a comment down below that says, I am more powerful than I believe. Leave a comment down below that says, I am more powerful than I believe. So have an absolutely great day. I appreciate you watching this video. Okay, thank you for watching. If you're here on Facebook, make sure that you like my page. That's how you're going to get notified for new videos and other awesome things that I do to give away. And if you dig this video, make sure you hit the share button. Right over there, hit the share button to share this video to inspire more people like this video. Comment down below, best day ever. Today can be the best day of your life, time where everything starts to shift. So comment down below, best day ever. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have an absolutely beautiful day. I look forward to sharing more with you. So like this page to stay notified for more and share this video. Thank you.